All right. Well, Rob, man, what a year for Big Noon Kickoff and the Triple Option podcast. You and Mark and Coach Meyer doing anything and everything wherever you guys listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Just another plate to keep spinning this time of year. Just talk about what a typical week, if there is a typical week of prep and getting ready for a litany of shows and having to know a little bit of everything. I mean, you've been a host in a number of different fields and sports for a long time now, but a big college football show as Big Noon Kickoff's got its legs these last couple of years and going on site every week. What does a typical week look like for you and the prep you have to do and just getting ready for everything that live shows can throw at you?
Yeah, to your point, there is no typical week, and it really starts as soon as we're done with Big Noon Kickoff. As soon as we're allowed to kind of exhale from those responsibilities, I go back and I watch back the show and critique certain thoughts and comments and questions that I had on how I did or how we performed, and then it's just watching games, and then our these stupid handheld computers. It's like there's a Big Noon Kickoff chain, and literally, if you're on a flight and you just kind of doze off for 15 minutes and you pick it up, you're like, I've missed 96 texts. Like, what is going on? And half of them are from people that are like 3 feet away from me and a row in front of me or two rows behind me. And we're just talking the games and what's happening. And it's funny when we get on these planes together, we're cobbling as many devices together to watch as many games that the internet will allow us on these planes. So all of a sudden, it's like one of those Vegas sports bookie rooms over there where we got phones and laptops and everybody's hitting people and yelling, and we kind of take over that area, and we're watching the games to get ready for the next week and what the talking points are going to be. We have a Monday meeting. We kind of hash some things out, and then each day everything gets a little bit more and more refined. But there's plenty of times, whether it's Friday or even Saturday morning, where we're coming in and I'm like, okay, so that changed. Oh, he or she's with us or not with us. Oh, that's cool. We added that. Okay, we've got the Friday night highlight, like USC playing this Friday night at home against Northwestern. That has an impact certainly for Iowa going forward and for the nation. So does that highlight make the show? Little things like that, but it's a never-ending 7-day stream. My wife looks at me and she's like, "When is the day off?" I'm like, "When we're done with college football." And I'll talk to you as best I can, but we'll see you a little bit more intimately after MLK weekend.
Yeah, there you go. I was telling, we just had the bye for Iowa and just, 20 days straight. And they're like, why don't you get a day off? I'm like, it's college football season on top
This
of
is the
high school
season. This is what
football.
we
And
do.
that's, yeah. And you wouldn't have it any other way, right? Like
Correct.
that's just what it is. You talked about, hosting the triple option now and by nature podcasts, hosts, when you're on the broadcast side, you're supposed to steer the ship. You're not trying to do the analysis, a whole lot of opinion in there. Just that adjustment after 30 some odd years in this business of trying to just be the guy telling the story and not worrying about what Rob Stone thinks about. Has it been almost a bridge to try to cross, a mountain to try to climb to,
Yeah,
oh, I got to have some formed opinions on this stuff?
it's been a change. In a host role, typically you're not there to throw your opinions out. Certainly, you can flash your knowledge and the history and what you've accrued through the years, but they're not looking at you for the hot take on who's the best two-loss team out there that's going to make the college football playoffs come December and things like that. But with the podcast, they've encouraged me and asked me to do it, like do more. And I'm like, I'm going against, a dude who won the Heisman and the national title, a guy who's won 3 natties as well. But, I have enjoyed, once a week, every 2 weeks, kind of barking something out. And coach will jerk his head back and like, what? Wait a second. Damn, that actually sounds pretty good, Rob, because he's not used to me saying these type of things. It's more just trying to serve up these guys to make sure that they look good. So that's been an adjustment. And the podcast world, I resisted it for a while. I think everybody in my house has a podcast right now. Everybody in the world has a podcast. I thought it was just sit down, turn on a microphone and find some type of camera and away you go. And I find myself spending a lot of time prepping for the triple option, doing the research for the games of the week. And for me, listen, it's great because it just gives me a head start for what's coming for Big Noon Kickoff on Saturdays.
For sure. And you guys were in Ames for the Cyhawk game, the second game of the year for the
Yep.
Hawks. You got to look at Mark Gronowski finding his footing literally and figuratively
Yeah.
as you prep for this one. Certainly, Iowa's passing attack is what it is at this point, right? Like they've got their identity and they're not going to throw it a whole heck of a lot. But what have you seen from Iowa since that loss in Ames to a now, CFP rankings come out last night, and I think A lot of us thought they'd be 19 to 23, somewhere in there, and there they are at 20, and the committee's given the Big Ten their due. What have you seen from this team to put themselves in a position where, boy, if they go out and beat Oregon Saturday, Iowa's got a real good path to the playoff here.
Well, starting Saturday, it's the most important 7 day stretch in Iowa football in a long, long time. You know, having Oregon at home and then traveling to the West Coast to take on USC, those are your two best win opportunities that remain on the schedule. And if you look at Iowa's wins, there's nothing that really jumps out at you that says, "Oh, let's hang our hat on this victory." I think they're kind of getting a lot of credit for hanging tough and giving Indiana their closest game of the season. And that's not how Iowa wants to be remembered, but it gave them the ability and to move up to number 20 and sit there. And that's not a bad resting spot sitting there at week one of the college football playoff rankings. But if you get that home win versus a really respected top 10 Oregon team, you're talking about, a 5 to 6 point potential jump. And now you're inside that top 15 and you're saying, oh, we only got a few more spots to crawl. And people are going to fall out. It's going to happen. And then you go back to back with a ranked opportunity against USC. I think if you're Iowa and you're Kirk Ferentz, you're saying 20 is fair. We have everything left in front of us, which is really what I love about the college football playoffs right now. Typically, a two-loss Iowa team, it's written off, and you're talking about, I don't know, the CarQuest Bowl, or you're talking about something in Orlando or a Bahamas, or whatever those bowl games are that don't really carry the merit that they used to. But now you're saying, hey guys, here we are, first Saturday in November, second Saturday in November, and we got a shot to get ourselves into the college football playoffs, and not just a shot, a real shot, and a shot maybe, probably doubtful, but maybe getting yourselves to the Big Ten championship game. I think Indiana and Ohio State are clearly on a collision course with the schedule that remains for both those programs. But if you're Kirk Ferentz, I think you're loving life right now. You're going to have a big audience. You got another sellout at Kinnick Stadium on Saturday. You got a big time opponent that has a lot of respect. And I think people have put Iowa in a position where they're saying, we value you. Now we've given you the ability to earn it, to earn a spot into the playoffs. And it starts Saturday against Iowa.
What do you remember about you guys first came to Iowa City in
Yeah.
2021, the Penn State game? I think that was the first year you guys were week after week after week on the road. And this was like the tail end, I think like sixth or seventh, maybe eighth straight week that you guys were on the road. Coach Stoops was at the time. Obviously, he knows Iowa City like the back of his hand. Just what were your expectations, especially as a guy from the Northeast who maybe, didn't know a whole lot about the Midwest at that point, but just what were your expectations coming in, and what were those first impressions of Iowa City on a game day?
Expectations were shattered, were crushed, annihilated. And that had nothing to do with Kinnick Stadium, because I'd been to Iowa before. I knew how passionate that fan base was. I knew how electric that stadium was, but I didn't really know much about Iowa City and the campus. And since that trip back in 21, which was the last time there was a top 25 game at Iowa, I've been raving to people, like, hey, we want to go road trip to whatever. I live out in the West Coast, so I know UCLA people and USC and Oregon and Washington, and Big Ten experience is new to them. What places should I go? Who should I go see play? And I will always say, like, go to Iowa City. There's no reason not to. You don't know how good it is there, how much fun you're going to have, how welcome you're going to be, how satisfied you're going to be when you leave town to go back to your home. So to me, Iowa State and Bloomington, frankly, are become like these kind of cool little sleeping giants in Big Ten that nobody really gives the respect to, because they're too busy thinking about Columbus and Ann Arbor and Happy Valley or whatever it is, And I know those three kind of suck the air out of the Big Ten room a lot of times. But my trip to Iowa City was amazing, fantastic. Always had great respect for Kirk Ferentz. The first time I ever did an Iowa game, I was working for another network and I was a sideline reporter, and I can't even remember what the game was, Iowa somebody. And a couple days later, when people still, mailed things, I had something in my post box, and it was a handwritten letter. I'm hoping it was from Coach Ferentz. Maybe it was his secretary or whoever it was, but it was a handwritten note from Coach Ferentz thanking me for the work he did, the work I did, the research I did for, helping the Iowa program, and how nice it was to meet you. And it was one of those things, like, I kept reading it again. I'm like, that is the classiest thing that has ever happened to me in my business world, in being in sports television. And I was blown away that something like that would happen. And I put it up and had it on my little mantle. Like, yep, there's this note from Kirk Ferentz. So I always had this soft appreciation and love for what Iowa is. And that trip verified it. The crowd was fantastic. We had Big E there. Big E's going to be coming back, scheduled to appear at least. Big E this Saturday as well. So I love everything about Iowa. I got kids in high school. I encourage them, look at Iowa, look at what it has, because when you say Iowa, I think there's a lot of people there who have preconceived notions and just, farms and corn and boring and blah, blah, blah. Move on away from it. I think it's a fantastic place for anything. Clearly what they've done in basketball as well, men's and women's. And I know there's been a big change on the men's side, but yeah, I love getting to Iowa, excited about it, and excited for them and the opportunity that's ahead of them that starts this Saturday.
Kirk's got the rep for those handwritten notes, so that probably wasn't a secretary. That was probably
Good.
him for
Good. That
sure.
makes me extra happier. By the way, Iowa, like, look at all the coaching changes that have been going on in college football, particularly down in the SEC and these big programs. And the stability in Iowa City is really remarkable and something that I hope people don't take for granted. There are so many institutions out there that would kill, for a Kirk Ferentz and kill for that stability. And I know they can be snarky and make the comments about, well, we wouldn't kill for the offense the last couple of years, but you certainly would for that defense, right? And what is still going on and what Coach Parker is still being able to do on the defense. So if there is unrest, and I don't think there is, I think they've kind of moved past that. Just be very happy where you are. You're not searching for a coach that you don't know is going to be the right fit. You've got a guy who bleeds Iowa. And if I'm Kirk Ferentz right now, I'd be looking at photographs, like famous photographs of Kirk Ferentz, and starting to circle the ones that he wants for his statue, because there should be one and they should be erecting it right now.
Yeah, a lot of talk about that the last few years. You talk about the offense. Mark Gronowski, again, not the numbers that people are going to look at and say, "Whoa, that guy's making an impact," even though they're not that far off from Haynes King. Another story there entirely. But just,
Yeah.
I mean, you work with a guy in Matt who has national titles, has been a player of the year, was a guy in Southern California that when 10 other guys looked at him in the huddle, there was belief. And that's what we've seen over the last month, particularly that Penn State win, where just Cohen Entringer called him on the field playoff Mark. Like, that's what they saw in Brookings when he was at South Dakota State. In your experience and all the time you've been covering college football, you've seen a lot of those guys that just, if the numbers aren't even there, there's just that innate belief from
He's a
everyone on the
winner.
team that that's the
He's a
dude
winner.
that wins. What is it like seeing those guys? And what have you seen from Gronowski that he's got that shine too? He's got that
Yeah,
aura, as the kids
I'm
say.
glad you brought it up, because we're going to talk about, the Iowa offense, or lack of it, or whatever it is, because it's a new offense. And I know the numbers aren't there as far as what they're doing in the pass game and then how it impacts the total offensive numbers and the scoring numbers. But I think it's trending in the right direction. And it obviously it starts with the quarterback. And I pulled out the stat the other night, outside of, being the winningest player in college, winningest college quarterback ever. His last 5 games, I think this is to your point about the last month, his accuracy sitting at 68%, 819 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. So, like, he's starting to flash that passing game a little bit more, which is impacting the way that defenses obviously are playing them. His legs are his bread and butter, but there is something about one of those cats, one of those dudes that's just a winner. And I feel like it right away, right? You look at guys, whether it's in a meeting or how they handle themselves in warmups, the demeanor on the sideline or in the huddle. You just go, yeah, leader, winner. And it's one of those intangibles that all scouts, all recruiters are out there trying to qualify, trying to find. And I don't think it's a number thing. It's not something that the sheet of paper will show you. It's something that you have to hear and see and feel. And when you see it and hear it and feel it, you know it, right? And Urban will tell you the same thing. Like, he's seen dudes through the recruiting trail, and there would be enough of an itch where you'd be like, boy, I see those sexy numbers and the speed, but there's something there that's giving me pause. And then you'll meet like a Tim Tebow, right? You'll meet a JT Barrett, and coach will just go, yep, sign him, find it, figure it out, right? And I think Mark is that type of cat, that type of guy, and I think it's a really cool pickup for Iowa. And I will say this for Hawkeye fans: I do look forward to the days of like the Chuck Long era coming back and you're able to pass it and Tim Dwight's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I think that will be fun for Iowa. But in the meantime, I love how this program is trying to get better offensively, but they know their bread and butter. They know who they brought to the prom, and it's that defense, and that defense keeps showing up year in and year out. And they make defense sexy, man. It's hard to make defense sexy, but Iowa does it.
I try to tell folks around here, punting is winning. Those are shirts they have because of Tory Taylor. I'm
Yes.
like, isn't that kind of a cool aspect? Like, everything happens for a reason. You can take the positives out of whatever
Yeah.
scenario. Like, yeah, you had a couple stretches where the offense wasn't there and really wasn't there for a couple of years. You got to watch and see why special teams are so important. And Caden Weegan as a returner is nuts. But like Tory Taylor won games for it. He was the
Yeah.
MVP in 23 for a lot of folks. And it's like you don't have that appreciation for special teams and particularly punting in a lot of spots. You got Reggie Roby from back in the day, so Iowa fans are already a little
Yeah.
conditioned. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, yeah, you take the appreciation where you can get it for sure.
So the Weegan thing is cool. I
Yeah,
mean, the fact that he's returned a punt, a kickoff, he's rushed for a touchdown, he's thrown for a touchdown as well. And as of now, Coach Meyer, that's going to be his playbook is the return game for Iowa with 3 touchdowns via the special teams, and it's that overlooked little element of the football game. Everybody wants to talk about the games won at the line. I get it, I understand. Talk about linebacker play and quarterback intelligence and RPOs and all that other stuff, but it is so unique and overlooked because so many times you just see the dudes doing this, like fair catch game that plays over. It meant nothing. But when they're catching it, what are all those other dudes doing? And what are the signals? And how are you finding the lane? And obviously, some of it is just inherent and God given, intelligence and speed and athleticism. But we're going to break down, for now at least, the Iowa return game. And something like that in a game like this against Oregon, 100% could be the difference maker.
it's all, yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. It's like you said, the details. It always comes down to that. I don't know how much you can talk about this. You talked about your former network. You're a kid that grew up like 20 miles from Bristol, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, as you're growing up in middle school and high school, that network, the worldwide leaders, kind of hitting its stride. I mean, could you feel it there growing up in Connecticut of like, oh, like
Yeah.
there's something special happening here? And how did
I,
that form you wanting to do what you do now?
It's funny. This is going to make me feel like the old man who's mowing the lawn in his socks and sandals. But when I was a kid, right, there wasn't this thing called the internet,
Sure,
right,
yeah.
and there wasn't Wi-Fi, and I'm caught up in this YouTube TV carriage dispute with ESPN as well. I'm like, how am I going to watch the college football playoff selection shows? I'm watching it on my phone and figuring things out. But yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, about 25 minutes away from where ESPN was. And I still remember the day that a door to door salesman came to my family's house to try to sell us on the concept of cable television. And there's this network that you can see all kinds of sports on. And I was like, well, tell me more about the sport thing. But the sport thing back then, it was like Australian rules
Yeah.
football and maybe some horse racing. I'm trying to remember what the programming was, but it wasn't. They weren't telling me like, hey, you can watch UConn basketball and North Carolina basketball, and you're going to see Big Ten football. It was just sort of like sports, and that was enough back then, right?
It was
That was
the
enough.
Ocho before the Ocho, right?
Yeah, there's people running, and a ball might or might not be involved. And I don't know, maybe a puck or whatever, but I'm in, and it wasn't a big deal in the state of Connecticut. The fact that they picked Bristol, it just wasn't talked about that much. As I got into college, it certainly started growing, and when I got out of college, that was a logical place for me to try and start some type of career. I was lucky enough to have a 6 month job there where I was either let go or hired at the end of 6 months. And I was working the 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift. I'm rolling home at like 3:35, 4 a.m. and having to, and when I say rolling home, I mean rolling home to the house I grew up in and having to leave a note for my mom and dad, like, please make sure I'm up by 1 p.m. Right? Like, if you could do me a solid and make sure I'm up sometime in the early afternoon so I can have a life and then go back into work and do the grind so I can cut Winnipeg Jet Calgary Flame highlights or whatever. But the growth of ESPN is magical. I was fortunate enough to work there twice, behind the scenes and in front of the camera as well. I worked on College Football Game Day as a production assistant. I was in the back of a truck the first time they ever went on the road out to Notre Dame. And then, I got to do some reports and some reporting for it and some other things. So listen, they've done such a magical job. They are, part of our culture, really, in our sporting culture. So many people have come to rely on them. They are the place you go. But I think it's pretty cool that, so many other outlets and options have made themselves available. And, when I was growing up, I don't even know if Fox existed, to be honest. But, when I was in college, nobody was talking about them about college college football and college basketball and World Series and World Cups and all these things. So people realize how valuable and important sports are to everybody's day, and obviously to a lot of people's bank accounts as well.
Well, then what does it mean then to host a college football pregame show that stands right up next to the one that so many of us grew up watching? And
Yeah,
you guys have started to set your own standard, and it's been
yeah,
really
we're
fun to watch that
trying.
pace.
It's hard. It's a challenge because, as anybody will tell you, you're going up against an iconic property that has a generational head start, and and is ubiquitous with college football. So here we are, like literally just kind of jumping into the fray, and we didn't really jump into it. We kind of put our toes into the water, and like, hey, we should really get out to a game site. We got Urban Meyer, we got all this power. Why are we not going out to Ohio State from Michigan? And we would kind of have this this swell of energy towards our bosses, like, hey, come on, how about it? We can be better. We can do more. We can be of a more value to you as a company and to our viewers. And then they let us out a couple times. And I still remember, it's funny, I was reflecting on this last week. We only went on the road maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 times a year at one point. And they would have like these special little meetings where, like, guys, we're going on the road next week. And we'd be like screaming and yelling. And now, like, we'll get off a plane and get into a car in Columbus. We're like, where are we going next week? What are we going to do? Like, are we really going to go to Penn State, Indiana? Like that Penn State audience, are they really going to be invested in this game? And do they want Big Dude to be there when they are struggling and Indiana's really the story? Should we go to Iowa? Like, so now we're expecting this, obviously, because that's what Big Noon Kickoff is. And, it's unique this week that we're going to a game that we are not televising.
Yeah.
I think we've only done that. This might be the third time. We went to a Colorado game when the Dion Mania was
Right.
going on. We went to a Notre Dame USC game that we didn't air. So we don't do this often. We're there to talk college football. We're also there, obviously, to promote our game or our game later in the day. So this one is stepping, I wouldn't say out of our comfort zone, but it's a little bit different and unique for us. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for the future. But I do know that college football has been really good to Fox, and I would like to think Fox has been really good to college football back.
Yeah. Well, I think Iowa City is going to be good to you again. I know a lot
Can't
of
wait.
folks are happy to
Can't
see you
wait.
guys rolling. I think we get some time with you Friday afternoon if you're in with the crew. I think Matt and Mark were there in 22, or Mark wasn't yet, but I think
Mark
that
wasn't,
crew
yeah.
is. So yeah,
That was
man,
one of
we're
our best crowds,
yeah,
by the way. Like, we still
sure.
reflect back on that Penn State at Iowa game as one of those moments that kind of pushed us to another level. There's still sound bites and images from that weekend that are littered through the course of some of the Big Noon Kickoff little highlight reels here and there. In fact, I think the first words we say, like, where else would you rather be, or something like, it was something I barked out, and I know it was in Iowa City, and it was a bit of a shot at our competitors who were not there that weekend, and they thought they should be somewhere else, and we said, no, this is absolutely where you need to be. So I'm excited to get back, and I'm excited for the opportunity for both of these programs who need this game. If Oregon doesn't get this game and Iowa does, and then Iowa falters, all of a sudden the Big Ten could be staring at just two teams in the college football playoffs. So the Big Ten needs somebody to get going, and Iowa has put themselves in a position to be one of those teams to get going and get themselves into the playoffs.